Muy buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. We are going to start this 3 o'clock session, 3 p.m. session, but I would like to tell you that we're going to be having minor changes in the schedule, in the organization of the whole afternoon and of the discussion. Is the translation working? Yes? Lovely. So, we're going to be starting now the way we do every day with the information coming from our community manager about the discussion taking place on the internet. And after we have organized things in such a way that we have 2 reflectors today. First, Claudia. We asked her to be reflector of today's work. So, the committed person. And then we will continue our discussion session, and at 3:30 we will be asking our second reflector, Will Canezza, to be the reflector of the whole week, not of today, but of the whole week. And we will ask him to be the reflector then of the whole seminar all week. And we will devote half an hour's discussion to what we are seeing emerge of the whole week. So then we end today's discussion, and then we have a quick transition towards the discussion of the whole seminar, of the whole week. At 4 o'clock sharp, we will end the joint discussion, and then we will go not to group meetings, because we are not going to be working on day issues, but rather meetings per region. We will be meeting per region in the way in which we are organized. The 6 regions of the company.
Europe, Africa, Latin America, and North America.
After, we will tell you in what rooms every region will meet. And then the coordinator of these regional meetings will be the member belonging to ICJ, and of course the discussion, as we have seen, will be about the whole of the week and what is the takeaway message. The meetings of these groups, not color, remember, region. Well, these regional group meetings will go from 4:15 to 5:15. We come back here at 5:15 to start the final session at 5:30. The final session will go from 5:30 to 6:30. And after, we will have 15 minutes in case anyone wants to go to the room, to leave things, because remember, at 6:45, we are going to be walking to the City Hall of Manresa, for the official closing of the seminar. Okay? Quick repetition from 3 to 4. Discussion, all of us together here in this room. First, community manager, and then reflector on what we've done today. Then from 4:15 to 5:15, regional meetings. 5:30, final session to 6:30. And then we walk to the City Hall. Okay, lovely. Let us start.
Chris.
Thank you very much, and welcome back this afternoon. And now I'd invite the first reflector for this, our community manager, to give us an update.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. Today, there has been more activity in the social networks, more there than in the streaming. Generally, all participants in online Sipei are really, we can tell, impacted by the photographs and the video of Father Carver. Some remarks that they left us with are: so being committed to creation is something more than ideology. Did we not talk of ecology as a fashion? 2,400 water gallons to produce a hamburger, French fries, and a drink. What do we eat in our cafeterias? Some tweets referred to teaching on or about the planet. Earth wants to teach us all about resurrection. Earth as the first teacher. We can learn from planet Earth. Earth is our home. The world is our house. Strong call to protect and preserve the planet for the future. Out of the discussion, there are two remarks especially to highlight. The first, to train committed persons who are brave, respectful, sensitive and compassionate, not people only focusing on themselves and the success of their careers, persons with the ability to contemplate, pray and be grateful for what life gives us. Commitment with ecology makes us come close to many persons of goodwill in different places and in different ideologies. Thank you.
This morning we were talking about commitment and ecology. I want to share to you that ecology is really a great problem in my country, in Madagascar. Our nature was very generous, so Malagasy people don't realize the importance of it. They burned forest, they throw everything everywhere, they pollute lakes and rivers, they cut all the trees, and on doing that, they kill many wild animals. And if we don't take care on it, Madagascar will become a desert. So my feeling, in order at all those problems, my feeling in order to face all those problems is that I am just a small student in my place. What can I do? Can I really help change this world and make it better? And how? This morning, listening Father Joseph Carvey, I realized that it can be possible. In our life, sometimes we are tempted to have very wonderful projects, very great action, but it is so difficult that it breaks us often. The most important point is that we must keep in mind that small things can be powerful. And we can do it step by step. Because all that we do, as small as it is important for God. This is a routine of spiritual exercises. And I believe on it. So, to summarize my presentations, I'd like to thank all of you for all the presentations, the sharing. You make me to dream, you inspired me, and it will be a great motivation. It can help me in the future. And I believe that God was really with us during all the seminary. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Claudia. Might take a moment just to think of what Claudia said there. And if we look at that first question, can I really help change the world and make it better? And how? Would anyone like to begin with our discussion? Sonia first, number 2, number 3.
I think that the question it comes or fits in very well when here we're talking, and we've mentioned it repeatedly in conversations at meals, for example, that we've listened to very interesting things that not necessarily will be useful for us in our own context in diverse moments, having coffee or having lunch. I've heard remarks like that, and frankly, yes, it might be initially a general feeling, but the question is, can we do something? That depends a bit on how you understand it. What does it mean to be able to do something? What is it to help towards change? Can you do it all? No. Then obviously we would be very frustrated. A lot has been said and we can't do much. But if what we understand by the question is, can we dream everything? Can we imagine everything to be different? And can we contribute with our small, systematic, organized, constant, consistent share, helping each other and knowing that there is somebody with a larger vision? Is there someone that can help us? Well, then very slowly, painstakingly, step by step, yes, I do think we can help change the world. And finally, I want to manifest as a lay professional that I have been working with the Society for many, many years. I find that the Society of Jesus as an institution has a huge responsibility on the one hand, because it is what it is. It's been an institution that survived for so long, and it has a huge structure. And that, yes, has to be heavy on the shoulders of the Jesuits, especially the Jesuits who are at the head of everything. But then on the other hand, all those of us who work in a very specific job also bear the responsibility of being aware of the fact that we are working with all that structure and all those resources, and we have to know how to take advantage of it, okay? So we have to make sure that we take better advantage of everything. Thank you.
Number 2.
Only Bernard from Belgium. Only 2 quotations from the Memorial of Pierre Favre by heart. Sometimes I ask the grace for huge projects, and I forget to ask the grace for the small possible ones. And the second quotation, the more I allow me to be submerged by my affective feelings, the less I do act.
And number 3.
Sí, Arturo Moscoso, jesuita de Bolivia.
Arturo Moscoso, Bolivia. I will read what I've written in order to be concise. I don't know whether I will answer to the question, but the ecologic issue is very imbalanced. We are all responsible, but not in the same way. There is an imbalance in the prejudices that we make. There is an imbalance in the north and the south, understanding that there are south in our norths and the other way around. And our countries are the main responsibles of these CH emissions, which are responsible for the climate change. But the countries of the south are those that support the consequences of that climate change. So little states, little islands, they lose their access to water. They have many people that are forced to migrate, and they suffer from many problems. So the ecological issue is a question of economic, political, and ecological justice. 20% of humanity in a very consumerist way of doing things is really forcing the planet to this incredible issue, because they are consuming 80% of the resources. We have here a life and death issue. There are very many countries in the north that send residual toxic waste to the south. They are wasted in landlines in Haiti, in Somalia, in the beaches, in Brazil, and in other countries. So the ecologic issue is also a question of conscience. For instance, someone who builds buildings in Los Angeles, he is using copper in his building, but he might not know what's the consequences for Guinea, for instance. So they are throwing really millions of tons of waste to the rivers, and this destroys most part of the aquatic life and the subsistence of the community. So we have also here a reconciliation issue too. It's not only a question, sorry, the speaker corrects himself. So we have here a problem of reconciliation among brothers, because we need slavery to go on with the excuse of the ecology, thousands of people that have died for that. So we have to we need to ask for forgiveness to the poor. So this ecologic issue is a question of creativity too. The theology of the creation would help us to understand this redemption. And as Paul, he says, we need this liberation.
Pepe.
Pepe Menéndez, también para no...
Pepe Menéndez, maybe what I say could even be useful for the whole week. In fact, what we have lived is a reflection and a discussion very different to what we were used to. What do we need to do? What we are doing right now, so taking to our centers, to our institutions, the permanent discussion, that discussion that does not allow us to just follow the trends, so take a little bit of perspective and have a different focus to wonder why should we keep doing things as we do. And then there is another specific question. We do not have to do things alone. We cannot do things alone. Ignatius said, when I realize that God, in fact, is the one that is going to do things, then at that precise moment, I'm pushed to action. So I think that confidence, that trust in God, in Jesus, in educators, in students, in families, the fact of not thinking, they might not say exactly what I think. Thanks God. I mean, thanks God there is diversity. Thanks God there are different ideas. So I think it's important to fix that level of commitment to things that do not look impossible for students. So if we ask 15 years old to a student and we talk about the hamburgers and what we have been said, he will eat the hamburger anyway, because he will think, I want to stop, oil spills and droughts and these kind of things. So we have to place the challenges to what they can do, so that those little things we were talking about, and not placing them in an impossible dimension.
My name is Iken Naikechi from Nigeria. Yes, I think I can help change the world. And I think the best way I can do that is by taking it one step at a time. Small is beautiful. I guess Jesus did the same thing. There are a lot of people following him, and he created a situation where they walk away, remaining only a very few core group. And the activities brought us to where we are. St. Ignatius did the same thing in Manresa. In my culture, they say you cannot put your 10 fingers at the same time in your mouth. But one finger at a time, you can clean the pot. So I think one finger at a time, we can change the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben.
This is not from me, but something I forgot this morning. This young woman, Riz Fernandez, she has a talk on TEDx. If you Google TEDx, Riz Fernandez, she has an 18-minute talk entitled Finding Your Space in the Greater Scheme of Things. And she talks about how she moved forward to eventually found the social enterprise for the poor. I think it's a very good talk. There are some parts in Tagalog, but 90% is in English, so it could be followed. You might find it also her own story of how she got to doing something to help change the world.
Thank you. Any other comment? Well, thank you very much for that discussion. In fact, you know, to me, one of the great gifts of the exercises is that transformation of the individual. And I don't think we can really ever change anything until we change ourselves. And as the great Indian leader Gandhi said, be the change that you want to see in the world. At that point, I'll now invite our next reflector, to come forward. So Bill, to give us a review. Bill's got a very easy job. He's got to review the whole, or reflect on the whole seminar in 5 minutes.
I had a very easy job.
You've got the easiest job of this seminar, Bill.
Open this up. Let me take this off for a moment. Right, and I'm to do this in 5 minutes, so hold on to your hats. Here we go. Let me start. I do want to first thank Javier, the organizational team, Jose Alberto Mesa, and his team for this remarkable opportunity to have such an intense, challenging, energizing, daunting, surprising, encouraging, companionable, at times painful, at times bewildering gathering. It reminds me of some of the gatherings of my own Irish-American family, reunions. Looking back over these days, we had all these elements of a vivid family gathering. As we came to know one another, I think one of the fruits of this seminar has been the movement away from being simply a network, as powerful as that may be, towards becoming a community, a global community. And like many of the best family gatherings, the discussions, the started conversations are never complete. There is so much more that on reflection, we could have said and still hope to say to one another. It's one of the reasons I am so hopeful about and grateful to Educate Magis that we will be able to continue. As we began this seminar, Jose Alberto told us this was not to be just an academic event, but one of discernment. That is, looking at our experiences, coming to understand their meaning as a way to direct our life and work. So our community discernment was to bring into focus the overarching theme to explore the intersection of the education of the young and Ignatian spirituality. And we approached that intersection by exploring 4 paths, taken from the quotes by Father Kolvenbach. What does it mean to educate our students to form a conscience, to be competent, to be compassionate, and to be committed? Conscience. Father George gave us a remarkable presentation on conscience. Its rootedness in the human desire to find meaning, transcendence, and ultimately how to act, how it is viewed in different faith traditions. And that led to our discussion about the formation of conscience in a secularized, multi-religious, multicultural world. We recognized our own strengths in this area of conscience formation with Ross Jones and Ulrike Gettner, who gave examples of the use of the examen and discernment. But the tensions between maintaining our own identity while we welcome diversity, was the theme in many of our group discussions. I suspect that this is new only insofar as it is now so vast and it is upon us. As many of you know, there's been a long-standing practice, the principle of enculturation. Early Jesuits were sent on missions to immerse themselves in the practices and values and languages of a culture, to communicate the gospel in terms people would understand in order to save souls. And in that process, and to some extent, those cultures changed those teachers, if they were lucky, and influenced the teachers themselves. You know of some of the Jesuits much better than I do who employed this method. José de Anchieta among the indigenous people of Brazil, Roberto Di Nobili in southern India, Alexandre de Rode in Vietnam, Matteo Ricci in China. Personally, I believe the strength of the exercises, that profound personal experience of a loving God, will give us the tensile strength to stretch, perhaps painfully, to find God in all things, find God in all people, to change at God's urging, to participate in God's ongoing creation of the world. Competence. And then we had this surprising and disruptive presentation by Montserrat on competence, backed by neuroscience, the rapid transformation of communication and information, and even ways of knowing, revolutionized by technology. This was reinforced by the work being done in schools in Barcelona and Guatemala. This was teacher-centered. Teachers do not have to be dispensers of information, but could be guides, coaches, mentors. Students do not have to be passive, but could become themselves in their unique fragilities and strengths. But how is this possible, we wondered, with the obstacles of timetables, examinations, university requirements? Our excellent schools and teachers, and maybe even administrators, are already getting excellent results. If the results were to be measured by university enrollments, perhaps even wealth or other public successes. But we began to ask the question, is that what competence means? What about the formation of conscience and the saving of souls? And have our models of education imprisoned us, compromised, or perhaps one could even say tamed our greater mission? We wondered if in our small groups if we had reasons for deep educational change. And despite our fears, we tried to imagine what this would be like. We began to discuss the exercises as potential models, as new paradigms for the education of our students and our adults that respects the dignity of each person. I'm reminded that in the exercises, the director is to see himself or herself as also being one on the same journey with the person making the retreat, and that the process of the exercises is one of conversation. True conversations where both the director and the retreatant will be changed by that engagement. What a transformative way for a teacher to see oneself with students, or administrators to see oneself with teachers. And then there is the other Montserrat, for many of us a once-in-a-lifetime pilgrimage, in the Manresa of Ignatius. Next morning, we returned to the totally upending, challenging, and loving presentation by Peter on compassion and his work with the homeless. Each of us must have vivid facets of his presentation that we can hold up, indeed, that we must hold up to examine in the light of our own vocation. The most intense for me is the challenge to make this personal. In small groups, we discussed what to do with our students. That is important. But that, in effect, removes it from us. What about my transformation? What am I doing with my life? A commitment. And then the session today with Joe Carver that brought us home to our earth as an essential manifestation of commitment, challenging us to see ourselves as the incarnation, derived from creation, committed to the long view that sustains and reconciles us to creation. And then we were further blessed with Ben and Joe's examples of sustained commitments. So now I get to my summary. I'm reminded that Jose Mesa began yesterday with the quote from St. Ignatius. What kind of new life is this upon which I am entering? I am excited about that question for our schools, for the resources in our hands today, and for our work together. I think it is very important that our conversation continues. This will not always be easy, not just because of the distances, but because of our differences. We've struggled at times, haven't we, to understand one another's circumstances and perspectives. But all of our schools, and we together as a community of schools, share an important mission for the world. I do not believe this to be an exaggeration. We bear the weight of the world upon our shoulders. We are, or we could be, the largest, most influential voice heard by youth who will become the future leaders of the world. No one, no school, no system of school, no institution, and only a few multinational corporations have the possibility to influence the world the way we can. We must see ourselves as being connected to a common mission and to one another. We owe this to the world, to its future generation of creatures, to our faith, even to the Jesuit fathers who established our schools over those many, many years. So finally, here an attempt to speak about that mission, I am going to end by returning to the one C, to me, that was so central during these days, and that is compassion. And I'd like to turn to my own experience. In this case, a discernment on being a recipient of compassion, because I think it's helpful to reflect from that side of the equation. I am sure many of you have your own experience of this. Let me tell you mine. I've spent most of my life trying to understand or comprehend or make meaning out of life's brevity and its suffering. It's why I studied theology and philosophy. Well, all this came home for me 4 years ago when I was diagnosed by some top Boston doctors with a disease that causes much painful suffering and is quickly fatal. Now, despite the daunting odds, my doctors encouraged surgery. But then they were amazed to discover on the operating table that their diagnosis was false. 1 chance out of 100, I was told. But in the few weeks before that scheduled surgery, I thought this was the end. And here's what it was like for me. Time slowed down. Everything became interesting and dear and precious. All of what and whom I love that I would soon no longer see or taste or hear or touch. And that sensitivity to, well, really everything, including sensitivity to certain kinds of actions, the smallest gestures of kindness of folks reaching out, became intensely consoling. Notes, letters, even ones that folks might just have dashed off, I found myself reading over and over again. Small gifts, a phone call, every kind, generous gesture touched me very deeply. It's in surprising contrast, annoyances that ordinarily would have gotten a lot of reaction from me, getting cut off in traffic, hearing angry words, seemed to lose their importance. I mean, I thought to myself, how bad could this be? It cannot kill me. I already had that covered. So a few days after my operation, my surgeon came by one evening. He had finished his rounds. It was late. He just wanted to talk. He told me how much he valued the work I was doing in a Jesuit school. He talked about whether what happened to me was what? A statistical anomaly? A miracle? Luck? Then we said, but what about those who don't get that kind of break? What about all those who suffer in the world? I talked about my theological questions. He recalled patience and their suffering. We talked about what we would do if we were God. At length, the surgeon confided that he said he prayed the rosary. He prayed the rosary almost every night. Why? I asked. Why? He didn't know. He said, but it went right to his core. Prayer gave him strength to face the suffering of his patients. So after he left, coincidentally, I guess, a Eucharistic minister came in to see me and asked if I wanted communion. Yes. And then she asked if I wanted the rosary. Later, I won't tell you what I said. Later, I thought about that Eucharist. But it wasn't about the bread itself, or what it is or what it is not. But it was the context of the Mass. And I thought it was very much like a conversation with that surgeon. It's the sharing the story of human fragility and the need for immense consolation, and mutual encouragement of one another, to be with one another. It was a prayer, not a theological discourse, not an explanation of why we suffer, but as a strengthening of the heart of compassion. I believe that this is the gospel, that compassion is the gospel truth. Now, maybe this does not always feel that way at every Mass for us, but I think at the heart of all prayer is the manifestation of our fragility and the need of immense consolation before God. I think it's also the hidden gift that we receive when we are truly with the poor, with the sick, with the homeless, with those who have disabilities. We see others, we see ourselves, and we experience that community of fragility and the bond and the consolation with others. So, as a community of Jesuit schools, we have a remarkable universal mission, educating men and women for others, people who act in the world for one another, especially for those who suffer, and all God's creatures suffer. Acting from compassion, we could have hearts free to give witness, consolation, relief, forgiveness, whatever it takes. We, our schools, we have work to do. We have work to do in our schools, we have work to do in our regions, but we have especially work to do together. I think that if we can bend our schools, our schedules, our structures of learning towards this one goal, to give our students the opportunity to have that transformative experiences of their strengths, yes, but also of their fragility and common bond of consolation with others, with people different than from themselves, then we can truly say we are participating in the salvation of the world. We will have graduates that will grow into men and women with well-formed consciences. They will be competent in the skills of a good life and committed to God's ongoing creation of life. Or to put it another way, they will carry the gospel, that essential mission of compassionate love everywhere in the world. There's no manual for this. It will change by circumstances, by geography, and by events in the world. Like doing the spiritual exercises, we do not know exactly where this will lead us. Therefore, all the more important that, like the exercises, we be companions to one another, be committed to one another, to our ongoing conversations with one another, be committed to form and sustain this global community of schools. That's it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very, very much, Bill, for a very moving and engaging reflection on what this, on what has happened during our seminar. And I think it'd be good just to let that soak in for a while. And now we have 20 minutes for comment.
Thank you, Bill, for those inspiring words. And after listening to you, I had a prophecy. And the prophecy is that in the year 2114, somebody's going to write that after Manresa 2014, Jesuit education was never the same again. Thank you, Bill.
did we not, at the beginning of this, was there not talk about a surprise? That's part of it. And the surprise for me, and Bill, you just brought this to my awareness, is that we're dealing so much with weakness. And that seems to be connected with real possibility.
Albert Joseph from India. I would like to talk to you now. I have been constantly, the moment I set foot here, I have been constantly inspiring by the spirit of St. Ignatius. But whatever I heard, I came and saw in what's happening in European countries. The missionaries from France came to Madurai mission and sowed the seed of faith. And now we all, the people there in India, especially from my province, venerate all missionaries. Even now we get the inspiration from them. But when I look at the fathers from the Jesuits from European countries and especially from the States, we get dejected. I personally get depressed. I was really depressed. These people talk a lot. What are they doing? What are they doing for the youth? Are they really committed to the task? This is what I have been searching. Now, thank God. I am really grateful to God for all the speakers today and all the people who are really working in, especially in Spain and the States. I have been inspired by everyone. If they are really committed, I think they are going to change the world. And if they are going to change the world, why not I? So this is what I am thankful to God. I am constantly inspiring by these fathers.
Thank you.
Peter McVerry from Ireland. I feel these 5 days have been like a retreat in reverse. The first couple of days, I think we were in the fourth week, looking out as to how we can change our students. And then the last couple of days, we've been brought back to the first week, wondering how can we change ourselves. And the question, I can't change the world. The world is too big, but the world consists of about 7 billion smaller worlds. And all I can do is change my world. I can't even change the world that our students live in. All I can do is change my world and hope that in changing my world, it will lead others to change their world as well.
Thank you, Peter. Any other comment?
Soy Pepe. Bueno, yo lo...
Yeah, what I'm going to say to you is that I was here a week early and I saw God here and I saw St. Ignatius who came before us and he was preparing everything, filling it up with particles that would give us strength and illusion and commitment. And I'm so happy because I see that this has happened. And Peter McVerry was saying the other day it was difficult to talk of God when he was God the judge. Today we have God and St. Ignatius that inspire our strength and our trust. For quite a long time I hadn't seen a meeting of Jesuits that did not have that defensive, aggressive attitude, that attitude of, oh, the world is terrible, it doesn't adapt to me. And so the feeling of saying, well, yeah, of course I can't do anything, can I? The world is a mess, so much better for me to adapt and not to do anything. And happily I'm going to leave this seminar thinking that the strength, the force, as has been said, is here. If we don't do it, then we will have a big debt, not with everyone, but with God too.
Joseph Carver from the United States. I have been also deeply moved this week, and it feels like a retreat, and I appreciate especially your comment, Bill, around that we have been moved to a place of vulnerability. We have been reading this week as we have been praying through liturgy, through Philippians, and the blessing in particular that comes from the hymn in Philippians where Christ emptied himself And it goes through the movement of encouragement, united with Christ, comfort, fellowship, tenderness, and ends with compassion, the very place that Bill asked us to end. And I have found those readings mirroring what we have been doing, particularly the Philippian readings here in this room and on the internet and around the world and in our schools.
Thank you. Would anyone care to comment on that intersection of Jesuit education and spirituality? Or any insights that people have had this week?
George from India. I'm not going to comment on the intersection of Jesuit education and spirituality, but just one sentence I want to say. Small initiatives with compassion and commitment arising out of enlightened conscience make us competent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rosario Martinez.
Rosario Martinez from Guatemala. A Jesuit that I love dearly, Francisco Estrada, who works with me in the Javier, says that schools should be centers for evangelization in an educational platform. So understanding evangelization as something that humanizes, that makes us better human beings. I find then that there is a connection, definitely a clear bridge with what you were saying, Father William, between education and spirituality. Based on Ignatius, during these days I have felt really and truly made more human. And I thank you for it, from the fact of my being a lay person and from the fact of my being a woman and a Christian, and because I've been working for so many years with the Jesuits, I have known, as is the case, that there is a great diversity of Jesuits everywhere, in all colors and styles, anywhere. You have all sorts of Jesuits. So, within this diversity, I have to say that this week has meant all that diversity, and sometimes thinking, God, there they are again, talking of theory and theology, but then now this has gone well within myself. I'm so moved. So thank you, truly from my heart, you've made me human. Thank you.
Any further comment? Paul.
So just in terms of the intersection of the work we do and spirituality, I mentioned that I had just come through working on the exercises, doing the exercises. And one of the things that Father Murray, the president of my school, sent me, it was actually during the end of the second week, moving into the third, comes from von Balthasar, and I just want to read it because I think it says a lot, particularly in relation to Bill's sharing. So this is from von Balthasar, and it says, "In the deprived depths of yourself, at your lowest and in the obscurity and embarrassment of your powerlessness and resentment, I have chosen to make my home." And for me, those words were an incredible encouragement as I moved through the exercises. But I also think that as we explore all of the areas of this wounded and hurt world, that we need to remember that before the world can change, men must change, people must change. And I think that becomes that point of intersection. That it's really, again, sort of a reflection on what the exercises do. That as I change, that as I become more and more the person that God asks me to be, I more and more am able to work with Him in transforming the world.
Thank you, Paul. Ben.
In the Jesuit schools in the Philippines, we run what we call Ignatian Spirituality and Education workshops, and they're mandatory for faculty and others. And I often give talks about the roots of Jesuit education, and I always say that Jesuit education did not come from a philosophy of education, it came from a spirituality. And of course, you go through the contemplation and the incarnation, and you go through the history of the first Jesuits. But then in the constitutions, there's that place where Ignatius says first that the most important thing is the development of spiritual gifts. But then he says that when it is founded on these spiritual gifts, then the next most important thing is the development of our natural gifts. Especially, he says, solid doctrina and an effective way of communicating it. And so that's basically what I say, that we have to have the foundation of spirituality, but after that, if we want to help our fellow men and women, as Ignatius realized, he had to get an education. And so the challenge then is to how to found this education, this development of natural gifts that is given to us and to our students, and to continue to found it and that spirituality. And then we ask our faculty and staff who are interested to share testimonials, and it's very moving always for people to hear. Sometimes it's a seminar, a workshop for staff, and sometimes a workshop for faculty, and they do share of what it has meant for them, and it's sometimes more effective than us. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Well, we might leave it there, and we're going to move to our regional groups, and the meeting places for our regional groups is Asia Pacific will go to the 4th floor and room 2. South Asia will go to the 4th floor, room 1. Africa and Madagascar will go to floor 3. Latin America will go to floor 3. Europe will go to floor 3. And North America, floor 1. So thank you, Bill, again, and to all our presenters. We'll make a move now. Thank you.